We all know that demonic spirits like to communicate through Ouija boards, but did you know that they've also figured out how to text to get their message across? Back in 2014, Father Marian Rachel from Jarosław, Poland, claimed to have received several digital missives from the Prince of Darkness after performing a failed exorcism on a high school-aged girl. The Austrian Times reported that the girl's soul remained possessed by a demon, so it's pretty legit. According to the holy man, the author of these texts is an evil spirit who has possessed her soul, adding, often the owners of mobile phones are not even aware that they are being used like this. However, in this case, it is clear. He referred local news reporters to one of Satan's texts that read, "She will not come out of hell. She's mine. Anyone who prays for her will die." After the father replied, Beelzebub took his turn and said, "Shut up, preacher. You cannot save yourself, idiot, you pathetic old preacher." According to the priest, clearly this young girl has been possessed and needs further help. It's not known whether the beasts also use WhatsApp, Facebook, Messenger, or Twitter. Seriously though, if God works in mysterious ways, demons work in really lazy ones. I guess work smarter, not harder, but I hope my texts don't get hacked. Does anyone else know about Canada's first ever case of possession? This is an event that dates back to the 1600s. Leading figures in Quebec City during the 1660s, to be specific, suspected an alleged witch, Danielle Voyle, of employing diabolical arts to induce a demon to possess Barbe Halai, a young girl working at a manor house in nearby Beauport. Both the witch and the family of the girl had recently arrived in Quebec at the time, and the tiny village had fewer than 800 people. And when strange things started to happen to the family, people were a little thrown off. How strange, you might ask? People recorded details about them that we don't have for other people in what was known as New France. The French colonists treated this particular case of demon possession in the ways familiar to them from their country of origin. They appear to have assumed the demon itself matched the demons of Catholic tradition. Now, this poor girl continued to experience the symptoms of demonic possession for months after the alleged witch was executed, apparently on the orders of Bishop François de Laval. Sadly, the court details of the crime and sentencing have been lost, but we can assume. Historians have noted that the end of the ordeal came in the form of an exorcism, or what sounds very much like one, conducted by a layperson using a rib bone believed to belong to the deceased Jean de Brébeuf. Saint Jean de Brébeuf was a French missionary who was captured and killed in 1649, by the way. To quote the history texts, we have a laywoman who would normally not be permitted to perform an exorcism, in fact performing an exorcism in all but name. Experts consider this an example of the cultural compromises that the frightened colonists felt they had to make. These colonists were pretty few in number, and were cut off from France for most of the year, and were kind of in trouble. They needed support from a king, who might turn his attention away from them at any moment, towards folks that were just generating more income. And also, they needed help from indigenous allies, who they didn't always respect. Not good to offend those that you need help from. If you're looking for the records, experts have quoted sources including the memoir of a local aristocrat, the personal correspondence of a nun living in the town's convent, the biography of another nun who spent a year attempting nightly exorcisms, and the daily records of nearby priests. These accounts shed light on how town authorities attempted to deal with this affliction, which included horrifying visions, violent outbursts, all usual demon stuff if you ask me. Has anyone ever heard of the International Association of Exorcists? So it's an organization that was founded in 1990 by 6 priests, including the world-famous exorcist of Rome, Father Gabriel Amorth, and Father Jeremy Davies. Its statutes were approved by the Roman Catholic Church on June 13th of 2014, and this organization provides training and support to exorcists and also helps to raise awareness of the issue of demonic possession. It has around 250 members from 30 countries, and all those members are priests who have been authorized by their bishops to perform exorcisms. The organization is composed of mostly Catholic priests, but there are a couple of Anglicans and Orthodox folks, so made a little bit of variety. The association recently published a Mexican Catholic priest's report of a significant increase in the extraordinary action of the devil. Devotees who seek miracles have been victims of numerous cases of oppression, obsession, and demonic possession, according to the Reverend Andres Lopez, who is a member of the College of Exorcists of the Primacil Archdiocese of Mexico. He described the skeletal Santa Muerte, also known as Holy Death, or the Angel of Death, as a growing cult or sect that is a fusion of Brazilian Quimbanda, Cuban Santeria, and occult Satanism. He's also associated it with organized crimes such as robberies and narco selling. So overall, just a bad time for folks who live in that area. Okay, here's a doozy of a case. In summer of 2013, 25-year-old John Jenkin from Cumbria, England, expressed fears that he would kill his mother. While in his deranged state, he approached a random van driver, put his hands in the air in a surrender motion and cried out, "I am armed, but it's not in my hands." Desperate to avoid committing such an atrocity, he tried to end his life by downing a cocktail of whiskey, painkillers, LSD, and attempting to end himself in a river. He was discovered later that day, unstable and smeared with his own red fluids. his after self-inflicting. After these events, he was admitted to a psychiatric hospital where the staff was like, yeah, you're low risk. And they're like, get out of here, pal. I'm no expert, but I'd hate to see high risk if that's considered minimal. Later that evening, he confessed to a group of friends that he was possessed by demons, saying, I'm the devil, I need to confess. He said his mother had become aggressive and controlling after the events of that day, and that same night his sister Katie had confided to one of her own friends that she was pretty worried about her brother, saying, like, it doesn't look like him, doesn't seem like him, something's off. The next morning, after a brutal argument with his mother and sister, this guy went downstairs and hit his mother with lots of blows to her head with the sharp end of an axe, and when his sister came downstairs, he attacked her as well to stop her from screaming. Guess the sister was sadly right to be worried. After the killings, Jenkins was found stark nude, crouched behind a bench, acting erratically. Well, more erratically. When a police officer asked him if he had taken anything, he was like, lives. A court has sentenced him to a minimum of only 12 years in prison, which doesn't feel like enough. Alrighty, we're ending today with a personal favorite tale that I think needs to be talked about more, the case of the black lace veil. Now, while I obviously love the idea of a cute gothy aesthetic, this is anything but. After one of his public lectures, Ed Warren, the man we all know to love or hate, was conversing with a couple that had been in the audience, where a boy introduced himself as Alan and explained that he'd brought his girlfriend Lonnie to the lecture because he suspected that she'd been overtaken by some sort of occult influence. He explained that when his girlfriend became angry, her features would change into something resembling a wolf, and then the voice of a different person would speak from inside of her. Now, when Ed's wife Lorraine walked over to the group, Lonnie experienced an episode of instantaneous possession and lurched out in an attempt to attack Lorraine. This incident terrified everybody in the vicinity, with the Warrens ending the audience chat session immediately, and Ed was like, okay, let's get you folks out of here so we can deal with this privately. And Lorraine stayed outside because she's like, I'm gonna take a minute. In the backstage room, the girl was fully under possession, breathing heavily, and her facial features had transformed into the wolf-like appearance the boy had talked about. After about 10 minutes, the possession passed, and Lonnie was lucid enough to explain dealing with memory loss, along with losing hours and days of her life over the last couple of months, which is a symptom common in possession. She went on to share her background, that she was a girl wealthy enough to buy whatever she wanted, but money can't buy love. Originally, her now boyfriend Alan had refused all of her advances and bribery attempts at becoming hers, so she resorted to visiting a store prominent in selling books to help with witchcraft, and bought a book on black arts. And she performed a ritual to get a lover. This ritual involved, you guessed it, the black lace veil, on top of which she placed a crown of goat horns before renouncing God in her baptism, along with swearing allegiance to Satan, and finalizing the ritual by washing down the vow with a cup of animal life source. Simple stuff you can get at the grocery store. About a month after Lonnie performed the ritual, Alan began paying her the attention she craved, making her little world perfect. But what she hadn't counted on was that she was in debt to the demonic. She gave them permission to enter her life. Ed knew right away, crap, Lonnie's gonna have to undergo an exorcism, so he made contact with a priest the next morning who was able to come and assist. Upon arrival, the priest just wanted to make sure, so he instructed Lonnie to close her eyes and slowly count to 20, while his assistant stood behind her and placed a cross behind her head. The entity possessing the girl suddenly went wild, screaming, "Take it away, it burns, take it away," like she was freaking out during the entire exorcism, kept screaming, she's mine, her soul is mine. The spirit was eventually separated from Lonnie, but just before it departed, it vowed it would return to another. The Warrens gathered up everything, the veil, the conjuring book, all the paraphernalia, and brought it home. But I'm not done yet. Video's not over here. Later on, as time goes on, Ed receives a phone call from a man named John Rand, who's like, hey, can you meet my daughter? She has a natural knowledge of what he took to be witchcraft, and he was a little concerned. When she stared at people, even when they weren't aware of it, she'd fill their mind with inhuman terror. John called Ed because, well, Charlene was manifesting different personalities, some male, some female, some that could even be called human, but all making extremely threatening statements to John and his wife. He had already brought Charlene to various doctors, clergymen, and they were all like, talk to Ed. Ed can fix your problems. So Ed's like, okay, come on over, let's see what we can do. So when he met Charlene, he went to go shake her hand, and she backed away and stared distrustfully at him, keeping track of every move he made. His attempts to question her resulted in no-end answers, and her eyes began to wander about the room in boredom. When they landed on the black veil in the corner, Charlene jumped up, grabbed it, and clutched it to her chest. Her features immediately began to transform into those of a wild, sneering creature, distinct from this otherwise pretty girl. Ed drew 2 vials of water to himself, one unblessed, the other blessed by an exorcist, and moved away from what was no longer Charlene, but an inhuman spirit, a lesser devil of hell. Horrid moaning and various animal sounds came from the girl as Ed blessed her, banishing the demon away for now a second time. Yeah, those items have been locked up ever since, and I don't ever want to see them back in this world.
Number 5 on this list is Tsuji Ura. Tsuji Ura is a Japanese fortune-telling ritual that's goal is to tell the user their future. To do this, you're gonna need to summon what many people believe is an undead spirit or a demon, and whenever you do that, there are always some risks involved. You're gonna need a few things to perform this ritual. A comb, something to cover your face with, not just a mask but your entire face has to be covered, and to be at a crossroads that won't be busy. Head to the crossroads with your comb and your face covering. You'll want to get there around 11:50 at night. When the clock hits midnight, take your comb and stroke the teeth of it so that it makes some noise. Then say the following words: Tsuji Ura, Tsuji Ura, grant me a true response. Now wait, it may take a little while, so you have to be patient. If nobody approaches the crossroads or someone you know approaches the crossroads, then sadly the ritual did not work and you can go home. If a stranger approaches though, then it did work, and you have just summoned an undead spirit. Once you see them in the distance, immediately throw your face covering on. When you feel their presence beside you, kindly ask them to tell you your fortune. They should do so and you will receive an insight into what is to come. The thing about fortunes though is that a lot of times you're not going to like what you hear. We always have these lofty expectations that assume life will always be better than it is right now. Well, what if you knew for certain that it's actually going to be worse and there isn't anything that you can do about it? That's one of the reasons why you shouldn't do this ritual, because knowing what comes can take the meaning out of life. This is also a demonic ritual where you're summoning an undead spirit. It doesn't always go the way that you want it to, and on occasion people have reported that the spirit that they summoned wasn't the one that they expected. Similar to how demons can hijack Ouija board experiences, they could do the exact same thing here. Number 4 on this list is the concentration ritual. This is a pretty strange one where you'll actually learn how you're going to die. If you want to do this, then you won't be able to do it by yourself. You're going to need another person to help you. Close your eyes and clear your mind. Have your friend stand behind you and lightly pound your back as they begin the concentration chant. Now for this video, I'm not going to go through the entire chant because it's actually really long, but to sum it up, there are 5 verses that act as a way of hypnotizing you and sending your spirit away from your body. When it finishes, your friend from behind you will give you a light push that should make you stumble and fall forward. As you're regaining your balance, open your eyes and you should see a color. The color that you see determines how you're gonna die. For instance, red means that somebody's gonna stab you. White means that you will die of old age and you'll go to heaven, whereas black means that you'll die of old age and go to hell. The thing about this game is that you'll never know when this is going to happen to you. So you may learn that you're going to die from being stabbed, but never know when or by who. So for the rest of your life, you will be living in constant paranoia of somebody stabbing you. I think when it comes to death, ignorance truly is bliss, and learning about how you can die can only ever make your life worse right now. Number 3 on this list is the elevator game. The elevator game is a demonic ritual of sorts that is supposed to grant you the ability to enter another world. This other world is considered by most to be a demon realm. The game itself started in Korea, but has slowly gained more intrigue across the world from people looking to potentially enter hell. To do this, you'll need an elevator in a building that's at least 10 stories tall. The building that you're in should ideally be as empty as possible. Get in your elevator and then proceed to these following floors in order. First, you go to the 4th floor, then you descend to the 2nd floor. Then up to the 6th, and then back down to the 2nd, and then go all the way up to the 10th floor, and then finally back down to the 5th. Now at the 5th floor is when things get interesting. People have done this and have reported having an encounter with a woman. This woman looks normal on the outside, but I promise you that she isn't to be trusted. She will enter the elevator from the 5th floor and do anything she can to gain your attention. This could come in the form of flattery, or she may even antagonize you, but whatever you do, do not pay her any mind at all. There doesn't seem to be a conclusive answer to what happens if you speak to her. However, death or an eternal haunting, these are very much on the table. Once she enters and you don't speak to her, press the 1st floor. If you descend to the 1st floor, get out of the elevator and don't look back. You weren't accepted into the other world. If the elevator starts to go up when you press the 1st floor though, then congratulations, you just made it into the demon realm. The elevator will rise to floor 10, and when the doors open, you will find yourself staring out at a very different version of the 10th floor. From my understanding, it looks very similar to the other side in the popular sci-fi television show Stranger Things. The lights will be out, darkness will flood the space. Apparently, some people have reported seeing a red cross if you look out the windows. If you want to get back, then just repeat the steps that you did to get there and you should make it back home. Now, this could all just be an elaborate prank to get people to hop in an elevator and waste their entire day by going up and down floors. Because if somebody hops in the elevator, then you have to stop and do it all over again. However, in 2013, a Canadian student died in an elevator, and when people watched back the footage, she was acting very strangely in the elevator prior to dying, almost as if she was being possessed. None of these rituals are an exact science, and any time you attempt to go to another world, expect there to be some potential consequences. Number 2 on this list is the Three Kings. The Three Kings is a ritual that should transport one person to an unknown dimension where they may get clarity on their past or future. Now, for this ritual, you're gonna need a lot of things to make it work. A room without any outside light at all, a candle, a bucket of water, 2 sizable mirrors, an alarm clock, 3 chairs, a cell phone, and a friend that you trust. Yeah, I know, it's a lot of stuff. At around 11 at night, start setting up your ritual. Set up the chair in the middle of your room facing north and put the other 2 chairs next to it facing the same way. Take your mirrors and put them sitting in the chairs facing outwards. Have the bucket of water close by your chair. Now, once all of this is done, it's time for you to go to sleep. Sleep until 3:30 a.m. in the morning. You must wake up precisely at that time and then head over to that room. Close the door and sit in the middle chair with your candle now lit. You should have your friend waiting outside of the door of the room that you're in. Now, if all of this has been done correctly, this is when you should start to hear some voices. They'll be coming from the mirrors on either side of you, but it's very important that you do not look at these mirrors or make eye contact with whomever is speaking. You just have to keep staring ahead and try to stay calm. One of these voices will be the fool and one will be the queen. You in this scenario are the king. Being the king, you are allowed to ask questions that you would like to be answered. One of these beings will answer the questions. The problem is that you're never going to know who is who. The queen will tell you the truth, whereas the fool will lie to you. Not knowing who is who and having no way to find out makes it very difficult to discern the truth to these questions. Sometimes they may even respond to your question with one of their own, in which case you're obligated to reply. You will be able to speak to these beings for 1 hour, and right as that hour is up, your friend on the outside needs to get your attention. They should knock first, then try to call you. If you haven't responded to either of those, they need to come inside and throw the bucket of water on you. You may not respond to any of these initially because it's said that this ritual can bring you into a very deep trance. A trance that makes that hour you're sitting there feel like an eternity. An entire lifetime where you're stuck in your own mind sitting in that chair. Considering you don't even know if these answers are true or not, the risk is just not worth the reward for this ritual. Number 1 on this list is the corner game. This may be classified as a game, however, it is basically a summoning ritual to bring a demon or ghostly spirit to our world. You can't perform this one on your own. You're going to need to have 4 people in total if you want to do this. You're also going to need access to a house without anything living in it other than you and your 3 friends. Turn off all the lights in your building or your home except for the ones in the room that you've chosen to perform the ritual. This room that you've chosen to do your ritual in, it has to have exactly 4 corners. Can't have any more, can't have any less. Head into your room and speak your name 3 times as you enter. Now, before you enter the room, you'll have chosen a speaker. From here on out, after you've said your names, they are the only person that's allowed to say anything. Once you're inside, you've all repeated your names, close the door, and turn off the lights. Everyone has to go to a corner of their choosing now and face into it with their backs to the center of the room. The speaker will then count to 3, and after they have done so, everyone has to move to the next corner of the room in a clockwise direction without looking at the center of the room. Do this exactly 4 times so that you end up in the same corner that you started in. Once this is completed, you will feel the presence of a figure in the center of the room. This is the demon or ghostly spirit that you've just summoned. Now, what's kind of ridiculous about this is that you've just summoned this being, but you're not actually allowed to turn around and look at it. You have to remain with your back to the wall and just feel its presence. After you've had enough, you need to do the completion procedure, which is where everyone says their full name backwards 3 times, and then one by one, exit the room hoping that the being doesn't follow you or isn't still there. People trying this game have reported having one of their members disappear and not being able to get them back. People have also said that sometimes the room is now forever haunted by this thing that you just summoned. Either way, I would never do this because you literally can't even see the demon that you just brought here. You go through all of this trouble, risk your life, to just stand with your back to the room, staring at a corner. Not really my idea of a good time. Number 5 on this list is the ritual to the other side. This is a ritual performed to let you experience a little bit of the demon world. Now, unlike some of the other demonic rituals on this list, it's relatively tame, and your life, it's not going to be at stake. However, the mental strain that it can have on you can be extremely costing. You're going to need a sizable mirror, enough that you can put both of your hands flat on it while still seeing your upper body. A completely pitch black room with absolutely no light whatsoever, a singular candle, but one that isn't too large and won't illuminate the whole room, just something where you can see yourself. Also, an alarm and somewhere to sleep. Now, after you have your items, go take a nap. You want to set your alarm for roughly 2 hours of sleep so that when you wake up, you are decently dazed and not fully aware. Right when you wake up, go to your room with your mirror and make it pitch black. Then light your candle and have it somewhere out of sight, just enough light that you can make out your face in the mirror. You want to place both hands on the mirror roughly shoulder width apart and start to stare at yourself. Focus on yourself. Your focus needs to be impeccable if you want this to work. Now start to alter your breathing. A slow breathe in and a longer exhale. You want your mind and your body to go completely blank and feel as if they're exiting your body. If you're doing all of this properly, then you should start to feel subtle vibrations in your hands that ring throughout your arms. This should be followed by your face starting to distort as if you were hallucinating. Now is when the real images start though. People have reported seeing flashes of loved ones who have died where they're supposed to be standing in the mirror, or have their own bodies start to morph into a demon. Sounds and voices will begin to ring throughout the supposedly silent room, and in extreme cases, your entire room will morph itself into a fiery hell. You have now calmed your mind to a state where it is capable of comprehending the demon realm, and you are in it. Now, it's relatively easy to snap out of this place and no harm will come to you, but that's not the case for some people. This experience can be extremely jarring and haunt people for the rest of their lives. In very rare cases, people who have tried this have descended into a deep depression or even madness. I can only imagine that knowing what is on the other side and what could be potentially waiting for us is a very scary place to be. Sometimes, guys, ignorance truly is bliss. Number 4 on this list is a game called the Devil's Game. In this ritual, you will basically be summoning the devil, and summoning the devil can be extremely dangerous. To perform the Devil's Game, you will need a few items. A can of salt, 7 candles, red or white is preferred, a lighter or match to light those candles, some red string, it could be rope or yarn if that's what you have, but the color has to be red. You'll also need a full-length mirror. Mirrors are pretty common in these rituals, by the way. And lastly, this must be done in a church, and it must be done at midnight when you do it. Also, you are not allowed to have anything electronic or any religious paraphernalia that may help you, like holy water. Now take your salt and surround the mirror on the ground. Then wrap your mirror with the red string. Take your candles and light them and space them out around the mirror as well. All of these things are actually to help protect you from the devil. The summoning you still have to do. To summon the devil, you actually have to do something sacrilegious in the church. This could be anything, but I think the easiest would be some sort of vandalism. Do that and then close all the doors to the room and kill the lights so that you're only lit by the candles. Close your eyes now and count to 10 with the distinct image of the devil in your mind. After you reach 10, open them. You should be staring directly at the devil in the mirror in place of yourself. Now, the devil didn't come all of this way just to look at you. He wants to play, and the game is a simple question and answer game. If you get something right, he'll answer your questions truthfully, but it's not that easy. This is the devil, and the questions that he asks will be specifically made to stump you. In fact, the questions that he asks will be ones that you're never 100% sure that you know the answer to, and therefore you can never be 100% sure if he is telling the truth to you or a lie when he answers your questions. So when you ask him, "How am I gonna die?" and he answers with, "You're gonna get hit by a bus," is that the truth Or is that a lie? You're never gonna know, and for the rest of your life, you will most likely be petrified of buses. Occasionally, he will also dare you to do something. Now this is interesting because if you complete the dare, you will know for certain that the next thing you ask him will be true. If you do the dare, you could ask him next week's winning lottery numbers and he'd have to tell you the truth. But the dare he gives you, it's not going to be pleasant. Self-harm, hurting those that you love, completely going against any morals that you thought you had, those are all completely on the table. You could stand to gain a lot from this game. However, you could also stand to lose a lot or gain absolutely nothing at all, just a bunch of paranoia. Anytime you summon the devil, it's a bad idea, and the devil's game is no different. Number 3 on this list is Veronica's game. Now Veronica's game is a demonic ritual that will summon Veronica, a demon girl who died playing a very similar game many years ago. To get this demon's attention, you will need a few items. A mirror, again, a clock, a quiet room, a candle. This ritual will also require you to perform it at midnight, just like the other ones. Have the mirror set up in your quiet room so that it's at eye level with you. At exactly midnight, light the candle and stare into the mirror. Veronica. Veronica. You have to repeat her name 9 times, staring at yourself in the mirror. After you have done so, extinguish the candle and leave the room. Now, why is this called a game? I don't really understand, because there's really nothing fun about it at all. She's with you now. The demon Veronica is now there with you, and whenever you are by yourself, you will feel her presence. You have just awoken a demon who doesn't want to be awake right now, and she's going to haunt you. You'll feel the temperature start to drop whenever you're by yourself. You may hear sounds that you can't identify or sense movement that you don't understand. It's said that if you ever make fun of Veronica in any way, then that's going to be the last thing that you do. This demon supposedly carries around a pair of scissors at all times and will use them on you if she ever feels that you're taunting her. This demonic ritual should absolutely never be performed because you stand absolutely nothing to gain and potentially your life to lose. Number 2 on this list is a ritual performed by a bunch of high school students in 1986. Now this ritual has less to do about the otherworldly things that you may summon and more to do with the fact that this is just wrong and you shouldn't ever do this. 12 high school students were linked to a demonic ritual with the goal of praising Satan and cleansing the world of what Satan or these students may qualify as unworthy. These students had found an abandoned house that they painted black and used that as their main base of operations. They painted it black as apparently a way of keeping the badness in and the goodness out. It was here that they had been performing several demonic rituals for months. One of their rituals, though, culminated on the witch's Sabbath. They had been preparing for this day for quite a while, drawing blood circles in their abandoned home, and speaking various incantations to please their devilish lord. The final act, though, involved a sacrifice. On the witch's Sabbath, one of the 12 high school students, a 15-year-old, snuck into an older student's bedroom with a shotgun and used him for the sacrifice. Yeah, this entry gets kinda real. This was their demonic sacrifice meant to appease the devil. Now I can't say for certain whether the actual ritual worked because there's currently no knowledge on that. But what I do know is that the 15-year-old and those involved went to jail for a very long period of time. I also know that a 17-year-old boy who had absolutely nothing to do with anything died. Like I said, this one on the list is less about what you may summon and the consequences with that, but more about the fact that you should just never do this. And the fact that people thought this was a good idea, it's just complete insanity. Number 1 on this list is a ritual performed by 2 high school students, Mike and Sid. Now although Mike and Sid kind of sounds like a great name for a sitcom or like a really good cop show, these guys get a little bit darker than that. Longtime high school friends and big fans of the horror movie genre in general, one evening they stumble upon a ritual on a deep part of the internet. The goal is to summon a demon. Even though the boys have a deep respect for demons and don't want to mess around, it's promised online that this demon will be thankful for being summoned and won't cause you any harm. What you need for this ritual is a frog and a specific incantation in a language called Enochian. I couldn't find the specific incantation that the boys used, and frankly, I mean, it's probably a good thing that this information is difficult to locate. Grab your frog by its hind legs. This is gonna be difficult because it has to still be alive when you are doing this. Stick it directly into sunlight and begin to speak your Enochian incantation. Now, I kind of hate this next part because I love animals, but as you're speaking your hex, kill the frog. Let the blood of the frog drop to the ground. If your spell is working, then you will notice pretty rapidly that the frog itself will start to wither up and shrink. Now it's said that this should summon a demon in front of you. However, when the boys did this, that's not what happened. Sid was watching as Mike uttered the final words to their ritual. After it was done, Mike stood there for a moment, silently, with the dead, withered up frog in his hands, until he twisted his head 180 degrees backwards and stared directly at Sid with his eyes rolled completely back in his head. Then, without warning, he lunged after Sid in a fully unnatural, inhuman way, spitting and cursing as he did. Sid dodged him and ran out of the house as fast as he could, not stopping for 10 whole minutes. After an hour of waiting and regaining his courage, he carefully made his way back to go check on his friend. Mike was lying completely naked with scratches all over his body, unconscious in the middle of the basement. When he woke up, he had absolutely no memory of the entire incident at all and doesn't know how he got there.